Kath Megaw. I'm a Paediatric Dietitian and I've partnered with PediaSure to bring you a really exciting series on picky eating. And during these vlogs, we've covered a number of topics already. And today, I'm so looking forward to speaking to you about changing the feeding narrative. Now, we live our lives in stories. So events happen in our life and we assign meaning to the event, and then we string together these events and we create a story. And especially as moms, we love to create stories about our baby and tell stories about our baby. Now, they're not always accurate when we put them on social media because we're only telling parts of the story, and this can cause a lot of stress, especially when it comes to feeding babies and children, because there's so much expectation. And when you go onto social media, you see short clips, you see small amounts, you don't know the big picture, you don't even know the people that you are watching or following, and so you read into their stories maybe not what was ultimately meant to be the message originally. And similarly, when we have our stories, we post them or we share them, and maybe they're not interpreted in the way that we actually intended them to be. And it's similar with creating a story around our child's feeding. So often this is what happens when it comes to picky eating. So let me give you an example what I mean. So you have a baby and you start your baby on solids and it's going really, really well. And in your mind, you're going, I've got a fairly easy baby and we've managed to get onto solids fairly well. So that's your story. However, at the age of 2, your little one develops a horrible gastrobug that lands him up in hospital. And from that moment, he doesn't want to eat any of the foods that he used to eat. And you think, okay, he's just been sick, I'll give it a bit of time. And so you bring him home and he's getting better, and now he's looking really well and the doctors are happy that he's recovered well, but he still doesn't want to eat the foods that he was eating before he got sick. And this starts to stress you out. So now you are panicking because is he getting enough? He needs to be nourished after being so ill. And then you notice he's starting one day to throw a tantrum when you dish up food for him and he throws a broccoli at you. And then he goes to school and he pushes the food off his plate and the teacher tells you he didn't eat anything today at school. And so over the course of 3 months, you've got all these events that have taken place. You string them together and you say, I have a picky eater and this is who my child is. And that becomes his identity, and you certainly have an identity as the mom of a picky eater. Well, what would be really helpful is you to look at those 3 months and go, what other events took place during that time that could possibly change the way and relook at the way that you are seeing your child's feeding journey. So for example, you might think back and notice when he came out of hospital, he was really excited to eat a whole batch of olives and he really plowed into the gherkins, and he was really keen to try dad's sourdough bread that he wasn't ever interested in before. And so you start to remember that event, and then the teacher tells you one day that he actually ate all the food off his friend's plate, although he left his plate. And the nanny mentions the other day that while sitting on her lap, he ate her lunch instead of eating what she had fed him. So now when you string those events together, what you get is a bit of a different story. You realize that maybe your child is not necessarily picky or not wanting to eat, but just change in palate and choosing different foods. And now you need to go on a road of adventure with your little one to discover what different foods you could incorporate into his feeding journey that could change the narrative from him being picky after his gastrobug to him having now a different palate and wanting to explore different options. But I hear you thinking, that's all fine and well, but what happens in the meantime while I'm trying to explore and trying to find different ways to get him to try new foods, and I need time to come up with different ideas? And that is why using a nutritional supplement or a multivitamin during this process is really important, because number one, he is recovering from illness. So it's important to give him back the nutrition that he lost during his non-eating days while he was sick, as well as what was used up during his illness. And so often giving your child a supplement and a vitamin boost afterwards can really replace the nutrients that were lost. They often become a bit iron deficient, a bit deficient in vitamin B during illness. And a child that's low in those nutrients actually starts to become apathetic towards food. And if you start to replace them and start to give them the nutrition, you'll find that they'll be more enthusiastic and start looking for food and start increasing their appetite and wanting to eat. So it is really important during this journey that you use these supplements to help you, so that you take the pressure off yourself and your child, decrease the anxiety, and you are able to change your feeding narrative. And then you can become more adventurous and start asking your little one, what foods do you like to try? And we often find that by changing the feeding narrative, you're able to come up with more creative ideas. Maybe it means sitting on a picnic blanket and having a picnic for lunch, as opposed to formal table eating, which he was very happy to do before the illness or before the change in the eating. And now you want to create a new story and a new way of feeding him, because this will make a huge difference into the anxiety levels that you are going to have versus you not feeling anxious. So what's really important is that you want to just take a moment, just relax, calm down, ask yourself questions. How did I come to this story and this conclusion that my child is a picky eater? What events led me to believe that? And what events could possibly lead me in a direction that would change the narrative? And what can I do in future to recreate some of those events? So maybe it means him sitting on the nanny's lap and eating his lunch there and sharing the type of food she eats if you feel it's appropriate and healthy for him. And actually, you'll be surprised at what you find if you start thinking a bit out the box. And maybe it's sitting on your lap and eating off your plate. And maybe it's, like I said, the picnic blanket and just a different environment of feeding, because that just creates a new story and a new way of being. So that is really our wish for you, is that you can change the feeding narrative so that it becomes a positive, fun-filled journey.